There we go. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. So you're ready for this?
I am ready for anything.
Ready for anything.
Please don't keep that in.
All right. Well, it's time to get started on another episode of the Edible Valley Podcast. Welcome to the Edible Valley Podcast.
We want to invite you as we embark on a culinary journey through the heart of Vancouver Island
From the fertile fields,
to the pristine waters of the Pacific Ocean.
we'll explore the stories behind the food that nourishes us.
Tune in to each episode as we deep dive into the flavors, the traditions, and the innovations that make this a true paradise.
Now, please join us as we explore our Edible Valley. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Edible Valley Podcast. I'm Chef Jonathan Fraser, and today I'm not here with William.
I am certainly not William Stringer. I need to practice my British accent if I am. But I am Erin Halischuk.
Erin Halischuk. So let's give the full description of who you are and why I have you here today, because you are not only the editor of 3 papers on Vancouver Island here. Right, exactly.
So I guess I should preface by saying that, yes, I am somewhat similar to William in the fact that I don't necessarily have much of a culinary background. He actually has probably more experience than I do as a server. But what I lack in culinary experience, I make up in journalism.
Journalism experience.
Yes.
And you are a fellow podcaster, as
Yes.
well as running 2 podcasts, maybe
This
3
is right. This
or
is right.
4. So you run the...
There's 3 of them. So we've got the NFL Report.
Right.
And then we have the F3 podcast.
Oh,
which
who's
is,
that with?
Somebody I'm sitting across from right now, which is yourself, and that's fantasy football, food, and football. So that's a fun trio combination that we've got going on in that podcast. And then I also have the Off the Page podcast, which is the Comox Valley Records podcast, which is sort of in the repeat season right now, but still exists in its full entity online.
Right. And
Yes.
that's the one where you go out and interview local people in the community.
Exactly. Yeah. And we just kind of take stories that maybe we've touched on in the paper, but maybe we haven't, and we expand a little bit more on that. So we've had some really interesting guests on that podcast as well.
Right. And I wanted to bring you on because not only did we just do a dinner about what I want to talk about today, and that's about the holiday time, right?
Yes.
Like getting ready to call holiday dinner and getting yourself ready. And we always like to do a little special here about on the Edible Valley about what's coming up or what to expect when doing a big party.
And speaking of expecting, we should probably tell the audience why William is not here and why I am here.
Exactly.
Look at that segue.
Why he missed our party yesterday is
And the podcast.
and the podcast and just hanging out with me is that he is having a baby.
Yes.
Well,
that's
he's
right.
not having a baby.
Well, that would be really interesting. That
Yeah.
would be worth a podcast.
I don't think he could do it. But no, William's lovely wife
Eva, yes.
Eva is having a baby.
Yes.
And so they're expecting, I believe the baby will be here tomorrow or the next day.
That's
so
right, absolutely.
It's a lot of excitement in his world. But I didn't want to miss out on this opportunity to do a little Christmas and also be able to brag about William's a father again. So
Yes,
with
absolutely.
hopefully a second little girl, I think.
Exactly.
Yes.
So an early congratulations to the 2 of them.
Exactly.
And we will probably chat a little bit more about that, or he will actually do the chatting about that upon his return to the podcast.
Of course. So we'll be doing a nice fun time in January, be able to catch up. But for now, let's get into Christmas time.
Yes.
And I know this is the most stressful time of the year for everyone, to be able to get set up and put together a dinner and then invite everyone over. And there's so many parties and so many activities happening. It's like what to do and how to plan for a Christmas party.
Exactly. So you, based on your experience this past week, have had not 1, not 2, but 3 dry runs for a Christmas sort of dinner. And then one of those 3 dinners was something that we did together as well just this past weekend for some friends and family.
Yes. So the first 2, actually, I was just the one organizing it.
Right.
And assisting in it, but it was my students up at North Island College. So we did two buffets. The first one was for about 45 people, and that was a nice, easy. We did a turkey Thanksgiving dinner.
Thanksgiving dinner at Christmas?
At Christmas. Well, sorry. As in, it was our Thanksgiving Day menu. And we took all of those things and put it together and made that into our Christmas holiday. And we offered that up to our international students.
Nice.
And they had a beautiful little buffet with a whole bunch with a turkey, potatoes.
Yeah,
all
that could
sorts of
float as a
great-
Christmas dinner.
All sorts of great things.
Yeah.
And a bunch of salads. And my students worked really, really hard to get that all done.
And second dinner?
The second one, so then we bumped it up another level. So we went up to 120 people.
Just
And
another level. No big deal.
Just the next level.
Yeah.
We added an extra day of prep. And we did the full deal for all of the college up there. So we got to have everyone, all the 120 people from all over who got to experience this beautiful buffet. And we did Yule logs, and there was actually no turkey, but we did lots of like seafood ballantines, and we did roasted duck. We had...
So this is like Christmas dinner elevated.
Elevated.
Like how many people are having duck at their Christmas dinner?
Exactly. This was its next level. This was
Right.
really to push the students to do some really challenging stuff.
Yeah.
We had, of course, a beautiful roast beef. We did a vegetable Wellington. So it was all stuffed with fresh vegetables, as well as we had 6 or 7 salads, as well as we did this beautiful carrot cake that was like a gelatin-style carrot cake.
Right.
So it was a little bit lighter. And so it was just a really, really great event. And the students really got to challenge themselves. And I got to sort of step back and just make sure they did what they were supposed to and kept them lined up.
And so then dinner number 3.
And this is what we're here to talk about,
Yes.
basically, was you and myself.
Yes.
For some crazy reason, we decided to rent a hall and invite a bunch of friends and family out for a nice dinner.
Absolutely. So I guess the premise behind this was that we it was an evolving idea, I suppose, over the course of a couple of months. Started in mid-October, I would say, and we sort of came up with the idea. We tossed around the idea of renting a hall that's kind of near and dear to our hearts, the Dove Creek Hall. And then we sort of thought, well, what can we do? Let's do a Christmas dinner. Let's do a Christmas dinner before Christmas when people, aren't necessarily going absolutely bananas with events. We did it, a couple of weeks out. And then we thought, well, let's take it to the next level. If we're doing this dinner for friends and family, we get the chance to bring them all together. Let's maybe make it into a bit of a fundraiser for the Comox Valley Food Bank. And so we just asked everybody. We invited about 50 to 60 people, and we just put out there that there's no requirement at all, but if you feel so inclined, we did accept donations, both cash and food, for the Comox Valley Food Bank.
Yeah. And so we're super excited. We'll talk a little bit later
Yeah.
about what we made and how it all went along. But we thought today we'd just go on a little bit about all the experiences and how we kind of set up this dinner for everyone and a lot of the work that went in beforehand. And these are sort of things you can think about for when you're doing your own Christmas dinner, because I know it's very overwhelming to have that point where you have too many people in your house and the whole focus becomes you pulling your hair out, trying to get all that food ready and prepared all at the same time. So making yourself get a little organized. And I thought we'd just go over some of the things we did and how we prepped ourselves to be ready for it.
And this might be a really good highlight because you say we did this dinner, but you did all the cooking. So you pulled this off in the span of about 10 hours. But we do have to say that was not without prep. You did do prep.
Oh.
So it's a good lesson for those who might be tackling a Christmas or a holiday dinner and they think they can take it on themselves. So this is a good lesson on how to space all of that out.
Is how to prepare yourself.
Yes.
So let's start a little bit about preparing the perfect plan for the holidays. Right? So I'm always like, when I'm creating my menu, it's sort of looking at what's going to be my centerpiece.
Flowers.
Not flowers. No, we're talking about the dish. I know for you were much more into prepping and preparing and making the place look absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
But for me, it was really sort of revolving around what would be the ideal dish to start with. And of course, we sort of put it around and we just thought, turkey is kind of that time of year or whatever. So we went with turkey.
Not duck?
Not duck this time. But here's the deal. But just because it was something that I could break down and do something big.
And you can prep in advance. So for those who are doing a turkey for a Christmas dinner, it's something that you don't have to feel like you have to do day of necessarily.
Exactly. And I took a lot of tips and tricks to make myself life a lot easier for me. And it really depends on how you want to serve it, right?
And how many people.
And how many people you are. And this is the whole thing, is we did turkey. But if you wanted to do a roast beef, if you wanted to do salmon or seafood is another great a lot of people have salmon and seafood for
Yeah.
Christmas dinner. Or if you're a vegetarian, right? There's
Yep.
lots, or vegan, right? There's lots of options to make. Maybe that vegetable strudel is the way to go with it. Or there's lots of other options. But just making you have that one centerpiece and sort of, prepping yourself and prepare yourself on how to go forward with that.
And I guess numbers too is a big thing to keep in mind, right? Like if you're having a huge dinner with 20 family or friends or some, anybody like that in terms of that size, that requires obviously a lot more prep. But if it's just like 1, 2, or just a handful of people, you probably don't even need to go get a huge turkey, says the person who's not cooking the turkey or the vegetarian as well. I should throw that in for good measure. But I mean, like, if you're just a small family or just having 1 or 2 friends over, you could probably just go out and get like a turkey breast or something, right? Like you
can
don't
definitely-
necessarily have to do the full meal deal.
Yes. And well, that would be my thing too, is sort of looking at, now you've got your centerpiece of what your dish is going to be with. Now think about what you have for cooking utensils, right? So that's like, do you have 1 oven? Do you have 12 ovens? Where are you cooking?
I want to go to that person's house who has 12 ovens. Seriously.
It's called North Island College. Which is a place I use to start off, because the other thing that I ran into is fridge space.
Right.
Right? So definitely we did the dinner for 45, 50 people. I mean, I think we invited 60 people, but it was kind of last minute too. But we got a good 45 people there. Was being able to, and we had enough food for about 80 people, I think.
We did.
But it was like having enough room to have space for all that food to keep it properly refrigerated and properly done, right? So that's a little bit of maybe creating what you're doing around that centerpiece, and then where you can store things and how you can bring them forward as you cook the meal together. So for me, we bought 3 turkeys and I left them up in the walk-in cooler at North Island College, which they had 4 or 5 days to thaw in the fridge, because it takes a bit of time, especially, they're big solid birds and they're full of they are frozen solid, the ones I got.
Can I say, side note, when you were first telling me about these turkeys, and this is again coming from someone, just for a bit of context, who is a 30-year vegetarian. So when you said to me that we might have to unthaw the turkeys in the bathtub, my vegetarian radar kind of went off a little bit. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? It worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not something I recommend, right? Like, let's talk food safe here. The best way to cool anything is in the fridge, right?
Yes.
Or to thaw anything, at least, right? So that was kind of how we started the whole ordeal. And then it was sort of reaching out and building our menu around the people that were going to be there.
Right. And we did have some dietary restrictions.
We had lots of dietary restrictions. So that's where we sort of reached out. And it was like, so we had some dairy, we had some gluten, we had a bunch of vegetarians coming. So it was kind of reaching out and sort of picking out those things that we could put together that would pair really nicely with our turkey, but then would be able to have something for everyone there. I took some concessions and made some things that I know I could have done other ways. But the basic thing is we set it up to have a nice, easy meal for me. And we had a lot of stuff pre-done. And then not having the fridge space, because we had a lot of stuff stored in there, is having like a lot of roasted vegetables, so squashes and potatoes and stuff like that we brought up there with us. And I did a lot of that prep right there at the time. So cutting a lot of carrots and squash and all of those things, and peeling potatoes up there, all those things that can hold in your pantry, having them all sitting up there on the counter and then pulling them at the last minute so you can organize it and go really well.
And I guess word to the wise too is, if like this, for somebody like me who really doesn't cook very well and tries to avoid cooking as much as possible, and I leave that to you, the thought of preparing full discretion, the thought of preparing a huge dinner on my own is something that is really overwhelming for somebody who isn't very culinarily inclined. And so, to think about it, if I had to do not a dinner with 40 or 50 people, but just for friends and family at Christmas or Thanksgiving or any time of the year, I would try and figure out ways that I could minimize that prep, knowing that like the thought of cutting vegetables for an hour is really overwhelming. So if there's something I can do beforehand, whether that's, cut the vegetables, a month beforehand and freeze them so that when it's time to go, I can just take them out on the freezer, put them on a baking sheet, and good to go.
That's all you have to do is have those few little things that are done. Or even then having them frozen and putting them into a cooler, letting them defrost in a cooler, overnight outside
Absolutely.
at a low temperature, right? You're losing that. You're not going to have that ability to make someone sick, right?
That's right.
Because you've got
Yeah.
everything, you've got control over everything. So this is what I'm saying, is this making the plan. So, I mean, we had a beautiful meal. We had, what was it, 4 or 5 salads? Like we had a veggie tray. We had charcuterie board there because we were able to get all this preserved meat that's fit really well in the oven. I got it all pre-sliced.
We had some cheese options. We had a baked brie.
Mm-hmm,
There were some
exactly.
good things. We had some gluten-free options.
We had a nice roasted beet salad, which I was able to make beforehand. The turkeys was a big thing for me, especially doing in these volumes. And this is one thing that I've probably talked a dozen times on this show before about, is breaking down the turkey. There's lots of ways.
My favorite topic.
Well, and this is it. Like the turkey takes up so much room. So if you're baking in the oven, a full turkey with the bones in and all that, it's going to take up the whole oven. So you have no room to cook anything else in there. And the time is going to be considerably much more.
Now, coming from somebody who, again, doesn't know that much about meat for sure, and definitely not about cooking, can you just maybe for somebody who thinks, again, they don't want to cook the turkey on Christmas Day if you're having a Christmas dinner, could you do that in advance? Like, could you cook the turkey in advance and then just warm it up day of, just again to cut down on the amount of work you're doing on the actual day?
I'm not going to say yes, but if you were to take your turkey and this is something we do in the hotels, and this was actually what we did with the students when we did our turkey dinners, is we broke down all the turkeys and roasted them off ahead of time.
Right.
Sliced it all. And then we actually made our stuffing and then put some dark meat, some light meat on there, put it on a dish, a little bit of turkey stock because we had all the bones broken down and all that, and then reheated it in the oven.
Right.
To make it a lot easier. Yeah.
That makes
Definitely.
sense.
You're going to get a little bit of a drier product.
Right.
It's just not going to have the moisture content of it. Of
course, yeah.
But it is a way of doing it.
Yeah.
And the trick we did with ours for being 45 is we had chafing dishes, which is steamers. So we had everything out in trays, and so it was very easy for people to come along, and it had a lid with some heaters underneath it, and it was kept nice and warm for
Which
a
is
long
not
period of time.
necessarily something that most people would have in their house.
And this is not something you're going to be doing at home. But if
Right.
you're a chef, like thinking about how you're going to be able to present your dishes in your chafing dishes, or whether you're going to have the turkey and you're going to carve it fresh out in front of everyone. Like that was another option that I had considered. And then I found extra chafing dishes. So I'm like, that saved me a bunch of time, and I got to socialize with people, because that was our goal of this whole event, was to be able to talk to our friends and actually be able to have a good evening, right? So,
which was the reason why we wanted to do something like this. And we just kind of thought, over the course of the past year, we sort of see people here and there, and, we have the opportunity and quite fortunate to go over to other people's houses for dinners or drinks or beverages, whatever. So we thought this would be a really nice opportunity, again, just to kind of give back a little bit to our friends and family, and to be able to get that chance to say, thanks for having us over to your place, come join us for a meal.
Yeah, and of course we didn't want to have everyone in our condo because it
might be a little tight.
A little tight, especially 45 people.
And a turkey.
And a turkey in a 900 square foot house is a little tight, right?
It's a little tight.
And I really feel bad for all of our neighbors in the place as well, who have to listen to some of our amazing friends. And
That's
great,
right.
They're great storytellers.
And a couple of beverages.
Of course. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tips for hosting.
Right.
Right, because you were doing most of the hosting for this, because I had my head in the turkey in the oven, right?
Right.
So I was pretty much full out. I know the thing is, you have to realize is that at our dinner party, I invited probably about 10 chefs.
This is true. And they all did offer to help, by the way.
Every single one of them came by the door, looked in the kitchen, and they're like, "Are you okay? Can I help out?" And I was like, "No, I got this," right?
Yes.
Because my goal was I wanted them to be there, and I didn't want them to have to work, because I respect how much time and how much energy they put into this profession. And this was just my little bit of chance to get back to some of those
absolutely
good friends that do the same as me, right?
Yeah. So that was really nice. And I it's obviously quite different when you're doing something like hosting an event for 45 people in a rented hall versus, anywhere from 2 to 6 to 10 to 20 people in your house for a holiday dinner. It's really different. This was a little bit more, I wouldn't say necessarily formal, but maybe more organized event. And you're not, when you're letting people into your house, casual maybe isn't quite the right word, but it may be a little bit more relaxed because you can take off your shoes. People can sit on couches, chairs. People filter in and out of your kitchen because it's not sort of a designated area in terms of blocking it off in your house. So it's a little bit of a different feeling, vibe, whatever, when it's something is hosted in your own home as opposed to a formal hall per se.
Right.
But with that volume of people, it was really nice because as the buffet was underway, I knew right away that it would be really hard, just like any large event, like a wedding or a social or anything, to talk to everybody in the room. So first of all, I think you have to kind of manage your expectations, knowing like you can say hi to everyone, but to actually engage in a really good conversation with everyone probably isn't completely realistic.
That's
so
true.
I think you sort of have to manage your expectations from the start. So what I did is just, obviously waited until everyone like you had their food for us to go eat. So I took that time as people were waiting in the buffet line to chat with people. So as they were getting their plate, as they were waiting, had a quick little conversation and then kind of walked to the next person behind them and then walked to the person behind them. So that was a really good way. You can kind of stand in one spot and almost let people come to you as they go get their food. So that was really nice to see and just to kind of engage people that way.
Yeah, it was a special night for us, definitely, to be able to share that with our friends and family.
For
and
sure.
I think a lot of it really helped really well because you took a lot of effort to set up the hall properly, right? And I think that's a key point, to make sure you organize and just have that little forethought about what people are going to need and what their expectations are, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I knew that, this was obviously quite a few people, more than what you again would probably have in your own house.
Of course.
If you're having 40 people over at your house, I definitely want to see that house because I think that would be spectacular. But in something like that, I just knew the way that we set up the tables, I just wanted it to look really festive.
Right.
So we foraged some greens. We just put that down on the table as a centerpiece. And again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. And I think that's key because I think that's another intimidating part of when you say like, I want to host dinner. Obviously, yes, there's certainly a cost to it, especially with food prices these days.
Of course.
Completely understand that. And then maybe it even feels a bit more overwhelming when you think about, I have to provide beverages. Do I have to decorate? Do I have to, how many dishes do I need? Things like that. Do they have to look a certain color? Do I have to get flowers? What do I have to provide as the host? And I think that can, from a financial perspective, can get really overwhelming really quickly, and rightfully so.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that I sort of approached it and thought, like, what's a really festive way at not necessarily a really high cost? So, my friend and I, day of, just foraged some greens out in the forest and just made sure, we were doing it very responsibly, and just put some pine sticks across the table and some fir, and it just, we got some oranges and that people actually ate. And we just kind of interspersed the greenery with some oranges just to give it a pop of color, to make it look festive, but also for a very practical purpose. Because with a lot of the kids there, or just even the adults that wanted something refreshing at the end of the meal, they just took those oranges off the table, peeled them and ate them. So things like that. And we used candy canes. So it didn't have to be expensive in order to make it look really nice.
Yeah, I mean, you also were able to score some nice centerpieces from a good friend.
Kind of a few of those as well.
And then you had, we brought a few lights in, which really brought up, like having some candles, or as you got the little LED lights, which we're going to use over and over
again. So it's just like those, flameless candles with just the small little batteries were great because we kind of stuffed them in the greenery to provide that mood lighting that were really inexpensive. You can get them at the dollar store, and quite a few for minimal cost, but it just provided that really nice atmosphere without fear of burning down a hall.
Exactly. And we also were able to keep our guests pretty occupied throughout the whole thing.
Yes. Yeah. And again, it's just about setting the mood. Like, we just had a little small stereo in the back with some Christmas music going. We had a little table set up with dessert and another little pass through with some beverages, just some non-alcoholic options, which were really nice. But I was actually really impressed, for anyone, I guess, hosting a party, no matter what the size was, is once everybody got their meal, and because it was buffet style, they were sort of interspersed in terms of eating times, but I was actually really, really happy with the way that people sat down and engaged with each other after the meal was done, which is something that necessarily you might not find, right? People like to kind of get up and go after their meal's finished, but people seem to really enjoy the conversation, which I was really happy about.
And the best was they hung around at the end to help us clean up, which was saved.
Especially when there's not a dishwasher.
that was probably, yeah, we'll get on to some of the things that we would change and do differently. But I wanted to talk a little bit about now, sort of like some of the gifts that we took from it and some of the support that we were able to give the community by doing this event. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the big one about how we sort of focus this as a fundraiser.
Yeah, and I think it kind of came about a bit organically, and this isn't to say that this is something that anyone has to do for their holiday dinner or anything like that. But we just thought that, we were quite fortunate to be in a position where we could have friends and family gather over some food. Mm-hmm. So we thought that it might be a really nice idea to look for or ask for donations, whether financial, whether food or anything like that for the Comox Valley Food Bank. So we were fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to have some food. So we really felt like it was important to give back.
That's a lot of the food we donated afterwards, and then we made $450, which I think is pretty impressive. And it wasn't like the thing that you had to come and
not at all. And down. That was something that we said, there's no expectation for anyone to donate.
Yeah.
It's just if you felt so inclined.
And I think a lot of people, and especially because we had a lot of chef friends there, they were all about, well, what can I do for you? What can I cook for you? And I said, no, this isn't about that. I want to have you as a guest in our sort of
our space.
Yeah. Because we would love to have you all over in our house, but neither of us are here enough.
Yes.
Or we're doing podcasts, or there's something always happening.
All
so
the things, yeah.
It's just sometimes it just doesn't work out. As much as we would love to have all of our friends and family in our house all the time, it just doesn't happen all the time for us. So this was just that event to allow us to do that. And we were able to raise some money. And the other fun thing I thought that we did was for everyone, and it was more of us to make life a little bit easier, but it was bring your own bottle.
Yes, which is definitely something that you can encourage your own guests to do when they're coming over for your holiday dinner. That is obviously, food is very expensive, and we all know that firsthand. Mm-hmm. Another really big expense are beverages.
Yes.
The alcoholic kind, absolutely. And so not to discourage anyone from providing them, but that's always an option, is you could tell your guests that, you have a limited supply, or you just encourage people to bring their own beverages. And then that way, people who have certain preferences can bring what they like.
Exactly.
And then all you have to do as a host is just, be responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though we were given quite a few bottles of wine at the end of that was very nice. It was
very
nice.
Absolutely.
Well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I think it was a really good event for us. And I think it really went well, and we were able to reach out to a bunch of people and not only get a bunch of food out there, but also be able to really connect with some of our friends and loved ones for sure.
Absolutely. And then if you are concerned about leftovers, because I know that's always a big thing after any big holiday meal that people kind of reuse, and you've done podcast episodes on this. It's like how to reuse your Thanksgiving turkey. How many meals can you make out of turkey? In this case, we gifted some to William and Eva because I know that the next probably while they're not going to be too concerned about actually making food with the new baby in their house. So that was really fun to do as well.
Well, I think this was a good description of what we did and how we did it. And I hope this will help people be able to do it at home. So if you're out there trying to figure out how I'm going to do it, we've given you some really good tips to be able to work with. But what are the things you do differently next time?
Oh, boy. Well, one of the things I think probably would be get a dishwasher, if I'm being totally honest.
Well, and I think that was what the one thing we did come down to is that having maybe a better kitchen location.
Yes.
As much as we love the Dove Creek Hall, it would maybe be coming in there a little bit more prepared.
Right.
Either having the food all pre-done and just throwing it in the oven to heat up there, maybe a smaller menu, and having more of a commercial kitchen to work from.
Absolutely.
Would be probably a little bit more helpful just in doing that volume for sure.
Yes, definitely. Because it's one of those things that you don't realize that you need until you need it. And then fortunately, we had a bunch of friends who stayed after the dinner was over to help wash a bunch of dishes. Which is also very difficult when you're on a well with a limited water supply.
Exactly.
And run out of hot water.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so you're boiling water and trying to do all that to keep everything up and using bleach and all that stuff. And then loading the cars afterwards because everything has to be out that night. This is one of the reasons I absolutely hate catering a lot of times.
Right.
Because you forget about how much work it is. It's okay to cook the meal and all that work, but then to take everything down, put it in your car, drive it somewhere else, and then unload it and then repack it. That's a whole nother a whole nother gig. But that would be one thing. I think next time I'd like to do it bigger.
Oh, I see.
But I would like a little bit more help.
Right. That's fair. That's totally fair.
And I think that would be something that would be easy for the two of us to do,
Right.
and to make it a much more fun event, and maybe raise a little bit more money for people who need. And I think my spin on this was that we not only did we get to connect with the people we love and that we care about, but we also got to give a bit of food to those who maybe don't have that opportunity to have these events like us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I give one last tip before we wrap things up?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so for anyone who is hosting a holiday dinner this year and maybe is really apprehensive about cooking or really nervous or just feeling a little bit overwhelmed, take it from someone who does not cook very well. What it was the one thing that I did provide for the dinner? You did 99.9% of all the dishes. What was the one dish I did? It was more of a dessert.
Oh, you made rum balls.
That is correct. So, word to the wise, if you're feeling any, apprehension about your holiday dinner, do what I did and make extra rummy rum balls.
That's
and
right.
then everybody will have a good time. That's my culinary tip for the day.
They were very well received. So
You know why they tasted okay?
because there's a lot of rum.
And I didn't have to turn an oven on.
No cooking involved at all.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think we're going long.
We are.
This is the problem with hanging out with you. I
I
just end up
know.
talking too long.
We just chat.
And chat. So anyways, we hope you at home have been able to learn something, and we hope we pass something along. And we're super excited for have Will back here on the next episode so he can tell us all about the amazing things that have happened in his life, especially with the new baby girl.
And just to hear about how he's managing food with 2 kids now.
I know, that's a whole nother hassle. So I know we're going to be, I shouldn't say hassle, but a dependency of life, right?
Exactly.
So especially having 2 young children, it makes it a lot of work. So I know we did a great episode a while back about baby food.
That's true.
And how to work with that. So that's something we'll probably be revisiting. And we've got a whole bunch of next year, I think, is actually looking really exciting for the Edible Valley podcast now that we're hanging out at Jet FM. So thank you so much for this station and letting us use your equipment here, as well as all of the other support we get from all the other people in our community.
And we'll just send our best wishes to Will and to Eva and to their growing family and to all of your listeners as well for a really healthy and happy holiday season.
We hope you all survive and get through, and we'll be listening, or you can be listening to us once again in the new year.
Rum balls are the key.
Key to everything. Thanks for listening to the Edible Valley podcast.